This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we're very fortunate to have as our guest one of my friends in Alabama politics, and one of the young men I'm promoting and talking good about all over the state. He's just an outstanding young man. I say young, you know, he's young compared to me. Anyway, he has had an illustrious career in Alabama government, and has just been elected Secretary of State, or won the Republican nomination as Secretary of State. And you know, he's one of the few times I've seen someone best qualified and eminently qualified to be Secretary of State, because they're in charge of the elections. Well, he ran the elections very successfully without any hitch. And our native Pike County for 12 years as probate judge, and now he's had 4 years in the legislature on his belt, and won an overwhelming victory in the Republican primary against a longtime veteran state auditor named Jim Ziegler. But Wes got over 60% of the vote in the Republican primary for Secretary of State. Good to have old Wes back on the show.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Wes and I did this show when it was still being done in Troy, when you first became probate judge. You know, that's been a while back. How many years ago would that have been?
09, 10, somewhere along in
so
there.
that's 13. That's what I thought. I thought I'd been doing this show here in Montgomery. Moved up here about 13 years ago. That's about right. Yeah. When you first became probate judge in 2009.
Yes, sir.
And
time flies.
It sure does. You did a great job as probate judge and a great job in the legislature.
Well, thank you.
Matter of fact, Wes serving them in the same seat I served in 16 years.
How about that?
Had this basically the same district. It was all of Pike and the northern portion of Dale, and it was a great legislative seat.
It is a great district, great people, man. Just hardworking, you know.
Well,
good folks.
It really is. You know, it really is almost like a microcosm of the state. If you watch Pike County, it'll be about like the state, because it has about the same demographic makeup, little higher minority, but still, it's like Alabama.
It is. You got higher ed, you got huge manufacturing base. And then you got agriculture, which is a huge part of the district.
Right.
So it's a snapshot of the state.
Wes, you know, talking about that, change back to your race for Secretary of State, that Alpha endorsement, talking about agriculture, has become the pivotal key to a lot of campaigns. I told Coach Tubville when he sat right there in your chair, he had just gotten the Alpha endorsement. And I said, Coach, that makes that's a game maker. It made him a substantial candidate. People at first didn't know what to think about him. So you got to say the Alpha endorsement was pivotal in Tommy Tubville elected the Senate. A lot of people will argue that it's pivotal in Katie Britt's campaign, that her first getting that endorsement was important in her race. I tell you, a race it made the total difference in is for Lieutenant Governor 4 years ago when Will Ainsworth got that endorsement over Twinkle Cavanaugh.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
I've said that in my column, and I'm convinced he didn't win. If he had not gotten the Alpha endorsement, he would not have won that lieutenant governor's race. That was the difference in that race.
Yeah.
Because more than just farmers follow that ballot.
Right.
I remember talking to
like-minded people follow what they do. You know, the same values and conservative values that they believe in, and work ethic. You know, just hard-working, everyday people that get up and work and go to, you know, take the kids to school. You know, a lot of them married to school. I mean, it's a huge organization. It's a federation. It's a grassroots organization. And one of what I enjoyed most was that summer of 21, working all summer and fall to visit those county meetings.
That's what I was
and getting to meet so many wonderful people around the state through those meetings.
So you did it just like Katie did. Y'all got out there early.
Katie and I saw each other at more meetings during the summer and fall of 2021. I mean, we saw each other. It's like, you know, the same meetings, you know, every week.
You knew it was pivotal, important, but you got to get out there and earn it.
You got to go earn it.
You can't go to see Jimmy Parnell and Paul Penn. You got to go.
Well, the voters want to see you that you do want it. the voters want to see you work for it.
Right.
And they want to be asked for their vote, and they want to see the candidate. They want to, you know, ask the candidate questions. They want to do these certain things, and so it's important that candidates, and this is, you know, what I say, if you're going to be a candidate, you got to go knock on doors, and you got to go see the people and ask for their vote.
You sure did, and you did.
Yeah.
You outworked it, man. But you and Katie were out there in 21 working those farmers, wasn't you?
I did. I saw her and Wesley on the campaign trail a lot.
Y'all were doing the same thing.
Yeah, no doubt.
Y'all were building that base.
That's right.
Well, did you find that by having grown up in Tuscaloosa, you still, because your daddy's a state senator there, so
Right.
you had that natural base too, geographically.
Right.
Did you do better in Tuscaloosa than you did other counties for that reason?
Oh yeah, especially during the runoff. Runoff, you know, that Tuscaloosa, West Alabama base really turned out. And
You saw it then.
oh, we did. We did. Saw it and felt it. And of course, Pike County, you know, had 90% of the vote in Pike County.
That's amazing. I told somebody that was just amazing. It really speaks a lot well of you, because if you serve 15 years or 12 years in a political office,
Right.
you what, 10 years as probate judge and 4 in the legislature?
Yes, sir.
You got to make some enemies. I mean, you know, it's like,
Yeah, right.
I'm sure I
You're
wouldn't.
gonna make somebody aggravated.
I'm
at you.
sure I
Yes,
wouldn't
for
have gotten 90% if I'd had a raise, you know, after 16 years in the legislature, because you got to make votes.
Right. You got to record.
You got to make decisions.
Mhm.
See, a lot of make some farmer mad about it. The land dispute, or something.
You just never know.
You know that you made a
Right.
decision on who gets this property, who gets this child, and a custody thing. You know, so that really was impressive, 90%.
Well, we're very fortunate and very blessed and humbled to have the nomination, Republican nomination. I don't have the vocabulary to put it into words. How blessed I am to represent the Republican Party on the general election ballot. Looking forward to it.
Well, you ran a beautiful campaign, and you'll do a good job as Secretary of State, almost like you scripted for it. With your background, you know, having been a
Yes,
probate judge and a legislator.
Yes, sir.
And you know, it's important too to know people over there in the legislature.
Well, relationships is what it's all about. You know that. It's about
Yeah.
people, and you know, people make the difference. And if you don't have relationships, what do you really got? I mean,
Yeah.
so you got to have relationships, and I'm proud of my friendships that I've built over the last 4 years at the State House and in the House and Senate. And I think, you know, if obviously if we're successful in the fall, we'll take those relationships and do some good things.
Good. You know, Wes, the job you're running for is a little more difficult. I mean, it's a full-time job.
It's a working man's job.
It really
doubt.
is.
It
It's
is.
not. I mean, state auditor doesn't do a whole lot, and Public Service Commission may not be as demanding. But that you got a lot of employees. I mean, you got 65 employees. Over
Yeah,
there.
it's a big group, and you know, I told folks on the campaign trail, the voters, you know, this is an important position statewide for our state, because there are so many eyeballs on these positions around the country in these other states because of the election,
Exactly.
you know, duties that you have as a chief elections official. And so
That's
my
right.
training and experience as a probate judge running elections, I think, fits nicely with it. And also the administrative duties we had as probate judge plays nicely with the administrative side of things that go along with the Secretary of State's office.
The elections are very important, and they, you know, like you said, the focus has been on them because of
Yeah.
the stuff that's been going on
Right.
nationally. And but you're perfect for it because you know how to run elections. And but it's a big office. It's like
Yeah.
you got to.
Have it's 1,000 duties, I think, and it's one thing people may not realize is it's the governor's personal notary. So whenever she issues or the governor issues a proclamation, the Secretary of State is the notarizes that document. So it's an important office, it really is.
Yeah.
That chief elections official is that's what people are concerned about. It's what I heard day after day on the campaign trail. They want to make sure our elections are safe and secure and transparent.
Wes, this is a good time in your life personally to do this for you and your wife.
Right.
Tell our viewers about your wife and children.
Okay.
She's from Bibb County. Y'all, tell us how y'all met at the university. I love that story.
Yeah.
You were playing football for Gene Stallings.
Right.
As a walk-on, and then and you tell the whole story and her name, and she's from Bibb County.
Yeah.
And y'all's children. Tell everybody about y'all's children. You've
Okay.
had two wonderful children, and you've been an exemplary father.
Well, I
That's
appreciate
probably
that.
one of the reasons why you got 90%. You have such a good reputation
Well, thank
as
you.
a church and family man in Troy.
Yes, sir.
But tell everybody about y'all meeting and
Okay.
marrying and everything.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I met Kay at the University of Alabama. I was a walk-on football player for Coach Stallings. Started out under
Swinney coached you too?
Yeah, Dabo was my position coach as a wide receiver. I had broke my leg during the week of preparation leading up to homecoming in 1996. We're getting ready to play Kentucky. And so I met her. I was on the sideline. I met her on the field, injured, and she was a Crimsonette for the $1 Million Band. She was a head Crimsonette, actually. And but she's from Bibb County and down from the Brent area. You know, you wrote about Jim Oakley not long ago.
Yeah.
Centerville
She
Brent
like
area.
that?
Oh yeah, we love that. We love that article. And
Wasn't he good? Oakley,
yeah,
a good guy. I
yes,
bet
sir.
she loved him.
Oh
didn't she?
yeah, man. Listen, everybody loves Mr. Oakley.
Uh-huh.
But so she's from Bibb County, and we met at the University of Alabama, and she's a sweetheart, full of grace, and just a Southern lady. And so we moved to Troy to take a job at Troy University, and had 2 children at the time. Davis was 2, and Deanna was 6 months, and so that's where we put
Was
our
her
roots.
maiden name Davis? The reason y'all named him Davis?
Yeah, and so we got Davis, who's the boy. He's 20, and Deanna's 18, and Davis will be playing baseball this fall, starting his junior
Shelton?
year. Yeah, he played at Shelton, and he's at Troy University now.
Oh, he's
going to play baseball at Troy University, and Deanna, we just moved her in at Alabama, and she's in the new Tutwiler Hall, and she just
The brand new one. She'll be the first ones in there.
She was the first freshman class of girls that moved into the new Tutwiler, and she did the sorority rush and got into the Alpha Gam
great.
sorority, and so we're very proud of them. And Kay has done such an outstanding job with those children, and just a very blessed man. And we worship at Troy First Baptist Church, and got a great church family, good fellowship of believers there that's always stood with me and stood beside me and supported me.
Well, you got an excellent reputation. You know, tell our folks at all what some of the things besides elections that the Secretary of State's going to have to do
Right.
as Secretary of State. I mean, it's got a lot of duties.
It does.
And you got a lot of, I mean, about 65 employees, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot. I think there's
Merrill's done a good job, though.
He's worked, yeah, and no doubt, he's worked hard. And one of the most important things is that business administrative side, business licensing, the LLCs and incorporations. And when an attorney, if you, Steve, want to go out and start a new business and you need to have an LLC set up, you're going to get your attorney to draw those papers up.
Right.
And so the attorneys around the state and business people around the state interface with the Secretary of State's office to get that name designation. And so, you know, to be a business-friendly environment in Alabama like we are, we really need to turn those things around quickly, because people want to go to work and earn and provide for their families. And that's one thing Secretary Merrill, you know, has really done well at. They've turned that around very, very quickly. And so that's one thing I heard from the attorneys around the state when I would go out and campaign and meet with attorneys, is that, hey, we need to make sure we keep that running smooth. And so we're committed to that, and looking forward to jumping in with both feet.
It had
in office.
become, what you're talking about had become a real issue. And John, to his credit, did resolve that. There were people who had to wait months to get their LLC and corporation papers back. And Merrill pledged, he said, I'm going to get this turned around either 24 or 48 hours. But they are, and you've heard it from all over the state. People talking about, you know, that Merrill has got that thing. If you file for it, it comes back almost the next day.
Right. And that's important. I mean, people, like I said, people are you know, want to go out and go to work and be successful, provide for their families. So that's an important thing. So that's probably, other than elections, you know, these both sit at the top, those two things. And so, yeah.
Back to the elections, Wes. The word fraud was not right, you know, but the way it was opened up so much was unique. I'm talking about the Georgia election, not the presidential election, that people claim was a fraud. I don't think it was a fraud, but I think there were some really loopholes. The legislature, didn't y'all close those up? I mean, and people can't just, the thing that bothered me was there were ballots being just mailed in.
In Georgia.
In Georgia, without any notarization or anything. That's openly, I mean, you know, you can't, we stopped that. I mean, we're not. I mean, that kind of stuff not going to happen in Alabama.
No, not in Alabama.
Go over that details of that the way that COVID opened it up and what was happening in Georgia.
Yeah, we saw it around the country.
It didn't happen in Alabama.
It didn't happen here, but Georgia and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and those swing states, those Rust Belt states, we saw that they use, some of these elections officials use COVID as a pretext to just kind of set aside state law and protocol and do a mass mail out of ballots when they really weren't set up to do that at all. And so it just created chaos and confusion around the state. And so that's the part that we've got to protect against in Alabama, is to make sure we just don't wake up one day and say, hey, we're just going to try this and do that. We're not going to do that. We're going to stick to the law, what the law says. That's making sure that we will never have mail-in balloting, because it's when an address in Georgia is getting 3 ballots, and the person no longer lives there, and so the person that does live there now is getting a ballot for somebody that lived there before them. That's a problem. That's a bad problem.
It really is. I mean, that's what bothers me about that election. Yeah. And it was happening in Georgia, and what other states do you think it was happening in?
Well, Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled that their Secretary of State up there just totally disregarded election law and just said, hey, we're going to mail out ballots. And
that really was a stolen election. Well, if you're doing that,
right.
Media probably
right.
say that, but you can't say that. But that just openly looks like fraud.
Yes, yeah.
So Pennsylvania, was Georgia being subject to that too? They were taking these mail-in ballots.
Yes,
they did.
They did the mail-in in Georgia. They did the mail-in in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and another thing that we addressed in our legislative session, I sponsored a bill to prohibit the private money coming into the public offices. Remember the Zuckerberg
Explain
money.
that in detail to our viewers exactly what you're talking about, what you did with, you passed the law. That, right. Tell us how it thought.
So Mark Zuckerberg, who is the founding person, he and his wife founded Facebook.
Okay.
And so they put $350 to $400 million into this nonprofit, and then the nonprofit gave out these grants to these counties all over the country. And so what they would use this money for would be to buy laptops, and even in Wisconsin they used this private donation, these private grants, to implant election workers in those public offices. And so it was really a kind of a turning out voters. It was a voter turn out the vote effort to get these people to go vote. They sold it as, we're going to give you this money to protect you and protect the public from COVID, like PPE and hand sanitizer, masks, and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But that's not what the money was being used for.
So COVID money was being used.
The private money, not government money.
Okay, not government.
It was the Zuckerberg money
for COVID,
flowing through a nonprofit to these counties, and it went to mostly blue counties throughout the country. But we wanted, as a state legislature, to say no. We're not going to allow that in Alabama. The government, our state government, is going to fund our elections, and we're not going to take that private money coming into these public offices, because normally when you get money coming in, there's strings attached with it, and so there's no auditing system with that private money as well. So we put a stop to it and make sure in Alabama didn't have that.
We've identified 2 ways that sort of defend Trump's accusation that it was a stolen election. Fraud would be too much because you can't prove it. But the thing about it looks pretty suspicious if you're paying someone money to get people out to vote and that sort of thing, like you're thwarted in the legislature. But these mail-in ballots, there was also drive-by vote. You could register the same day. And vote the same day. Now our laws preclude that, don't they?
Right. We do not have same-day registration.
But so those were legally, those states had a law that says you can qualify on the same day you vote.
Right. So you got automatic voter registration, and then you've got same-day registration that a lot of these states have, and I just don't think that's a good practice.
But legally. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court had to rule.
Of course, this was after the fact, obviously. Okay. After the 2020 election, that those mail-in ballots were illegal. I mean, they didn't have the authority to just mail them out.
Right.
They just bypass state law.
Oh, so after the fact, the court came in there and said that.
Yes. Yes.
But but back to the drive-by, just what I refer to as drive-by voting.
The drop boxes.
Yeah, that you can simply drive in one day and register at some booth and vote at the same time. You know, there's got to be some verification of who someone is. They can have a false driver's license or something, you know.
That's why.
And the person doing the registering may be a Democratic poll worker too.
Right. Right. That's
and you may have the same person drive through 4 or 5 times.
Well, that's why it's so important to make sure we never have drop boxes, because of what we saw in Georgia. Make sure we don't have mass mail-out balloting, because, you know, I believe in election day, not election month, and I preached that during our campaign. You know, campaigns are built for election day, not election month.
Right.
And for the security of our elections. And it's so important that we maintain safe, secure, and transparent elections. And, you know, we campaigned on that message, and we were successful with it.
Well, I'm glad we moved in that direction. Of course, we didn't have the problem.
No.
We didn't do any of
And
those
why is that? Because we've got good policy in
Uh-huh.
place. And
That's right.
we got good policy in place. You know, voter photo ID, you know. So that's just one thing. So
See, that thing of what I'm talking about, that could easily you could have, don't have voter ID.
Yeah.
Somebody's going there, you could have the same guy ride through 5 or 6 times and just say, I'm Joe Smith, you know, on Maple Street, and the guy winks at him and says, yeah, I know you are. You know,
Yeah.
and it's, you know, you hadn't got to do that. But Wes, back to Georgia though. I mean, I know it's not your bailiwick, but have they tightened their laws up over there?
well, remember they went back and had a big reform package of election
That's what I
bills
was
that
trying
they
to remember.
passed last summer. And you remember what happened when they passed it? And the Major League Baseball pulled the All-Star game out of Atlanta.
Okay, so when they changed those,
Remember all that?
that was the reason?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they moved it to Colorado, which had
Oh,
mean,
okay. So
it's-
Georgia has changed their laws.
what happened was they let this stuff get away from them. They're trying to get their arms back around it to make sure they've got secure elections. And so when they did that, you remember it was a big blow.
I remember that happening,
over-
but I didn't know
over
that the laws, them changing the election laws,
Yeah,
was the reason that they left.
yeah,
But I'm
That
glad
was it.
Georgia changed
yeah.
theirs.
They're getting their arms back around it and putting
Well,
some.
you'll see it make a difference in this fall's election.
I think you will.
I think you're going to see a different result from Georgia in November of 2022 than you saw in November of 2020 because of them tightening those laws up.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Wes, I was going to ask you, now your son's playing ball at Troy as a sophomore, your daughter's a freshman, moved into Tutwiler. Tell us what other things you'd like to do as Secretary of State. Are there any innovative things you'd like to do, or just keep it going like it's good? You think John's got everything going good, but just enforce the laws we got on the books, I guess?
Well, certainly, obviously. But one thing that we need to take a look at, it's so big nowadays, is cybersecurity and making sure that the data that the office has is protected, because we don't want our data to become, taken ransom, this ransomware attacks and all that you see. And so that's one thing we did in Pike County as a probate judge. We went in and built redundancies in to make sure that the land records, the car registrations, the licensing, and all could not be taken hostage or for ransom, and where we couldn't get to our data and we lose all that data. So we went in and built redundancies in to make sure it was safe.
Are you the only county that was doing it? A lot of other counties?
Now, there's other counties that did it, but we wanted to make sure we had firewalls and, like I said, redundancies built in, so where if something happened to the main server, we had other avenues to go back and grab that data, get it back up and moving again, because if you lose land records, that's a big deal.
It really is.
It would be, if you lose deeds and mortgages and those copies of those things, it's,
my gosh.
I mean, so we wanted to make sure we protected it. And
so what you're saying is the state of Alabama Secretary of State records are not as
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just
Okay.
saying when I get in there, I want to look at it.
You wanna make sure it
make
is.
sure, yeah.
It's done the
I'm
same
sure
way.
they've done a good job with it,
Uh-huh.
but that's just one thing that comes to my mind is that you hear all the time through media and see headlines on it about cyber attacks on government agencies. But we want to make sure that Alabama's protected, and I'm sure we are, but I just want to make sure.
There's got to be a coordination effort between y'all and the archives too, isn't there? Like you have to do certain records you save and
yeah.
send over to archives and Secretary of State. I know the voting. Where are the voting records for all these years stored? Are they stored in
They're stored in the Secretary of
Secretary of
State.
State's
Yeah,
office?
yeah.
I mean, results from 1901,
Right.
the constitutional vote to make Alabama a
Yeah,
state.
that office would have that information.
Well, you need to protect that.
No doubt. No
Yeah,
doubt.
that's what's wise of you to be thinking in terms of that, because you're right. This day and time, just someone just for evil reasons could destroy.
Or the information on the business side of things. Remember
Oh,
the LLCs?
gosh,
and
yes.
I mean, so
Oh my gosh! I
yes.
know business folks be glad to have you do that.
yeah.
I hope it's done. I mean, that should be the first thing you should look into.
No, it's I'm sure it's fine, but I just one thing that comes to mind that
Well,
I
this
wanna
day
take
and
that
time,
experience and
technology
Yeah.
changes too, so
Yeah.
you may have to go over and get a little budgeting for that. I mean, just make sure it's cyber and everything's safe. Well, Wes, you're like I say, you're cut out perfectly for that job. You've got the right resume and good time in life and everything, and I know you do a good job as Secretary of State. But our time's up.
time's up, goes quick.
It goes by in a hurry, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Folks, our guest tonight has been Secretary of State nominee Wes Allen, who is the Secretary nominee, Republican nominee for Secretary of State of Alabama. He'll be on the ballot in November and be Secretary of State more than likely come January. So we thank Wes Allen for being our guest. We thank you viewers for watching Alabama Politics. Hope you tune in again next week. Thank you, Wes.
Yes, sir. Thank you.